Hi, my name is Adele White. I am the Health Education Manager at Community Health. Community Health is a free clinic located in Chicago, Illinois, and we serve as a primary and specialty healthcare clinic for adults who have no insurance and no Medicaid. Today we're going to be talking about healthy eating to control high blood pressure. Another word for high blood pressure is hypertension. So you'll hear me use both of those throughout this presentation. I will be putting some links down below this video if you want to find out more about community health and what we do. So, if you're wondering why do you want to lower your blood pressure, why should we care about that? A couple reasons. So this diagram on the right shows all the consequences, the things that happen if we have high blood pressure and we don't take care of it. We don't try to lower our blood pressure. Things like stroke can happen, which can leave you with an injured brain, vision loss, blindness, heart attacks, kidney disease and kidney failure. When kidney disease gets bad enough and our kidneys fail, we have to be on dialysis, which is a huge lifestyle change that no one wants. Sexual dysfunction, heart failure, again, all of these are really big lifestyle changes that we do not want to deal with. So it's better if we can just try to lower our blood pressure on our own using lifestyle habits and medication if necessary. What happens when a person has high blood pressure? You can see the diagram on the left is that our arteries get harder. And so our heart has to pump twice as hard. It has to work twice as hard to get all of our blood out to our body, all our limbs, our brain, our organs. So basically, if your heart has to work twice as hard to do something, that heart is going to wear out twice as fast as it should. So today we're going to talk about cooking with seasonings, spices, and salt. Talk a little bit about prepackaged foods and fast food. We're going to look at nutrition labels as well, and then also using canned and frozen foods. There's a lot of pictures throughout this, so that hopefully will make things a little bit easier. One big thing I want to address is that a lot of people feel like if their doctor tells them, like, you have high blood pressure, you have diabetes, you have high cholesterol, that they're going to never be able to eat anything that they like again. That is absolutely not true. There is a way to eat healthfully and also have a diet that tastes good, and that's what we want. People's healthcare providers do not expect them to stop eating any delicious food, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Some concrete steps that you can actually take to make your diet healthier and lower your blood pressure, and it should still taste good. So right off the bat, you're going to see when we're talking about food labels and food packaging, you're going to see the word salt and sodium. The word salt and sodium, you'll hear some people use them to mean the same thing. A lot of times you'll see the word salt on the front of a package, and you'll hear when you hear them talking, they'll say salt. And the word sodium, you'll see in nutrition labels, those black and white things on the back of a lot of packages. Sodium is what salt is made out of. So technically, table salt that we eat, is the chemical name of it is sodium chloride. We say for short sodium. And we will discuss a little bit about salt substitutes and light salts. These are some options that people can use in cooking that have less sodium than regular salt. So one big thing that we look for when we start trying to cook with lower salt is we want to use as many herbs and spices as possible to give our food lots of flavor without having to add a bunch of salt. So there are lots of brands that have lower salt or salt-free varieties. Mrs. Dash is just one of them. I use a lot of these in my kitchen. I don't work for Mrs. Dash. This is not a paid advertisement. They're just sometimes easy to find, and they have a lot of varieties. So this picture, you can see there's just all sorts of different pre-mixed seasonings that a person can use. I'm kind of a lazy cook, so I don't like to measure out 6 or 8 different spices. So that's why I jump to things like this. That's a seasoning blend that's already made, and it is salt-free. So this is just one example. This is by no means like the best brand or a brand that you should use. This is just one example. The most important thing you want to look for is, you can see where I'm putting my mouse. You want to see it say salt-free somewhere. Some varieties will say sodium-free. You want to look for that. There are plenty of spices and seasoning mixes available now that are salt-free, low salt, sodium-free, low sodium, that you should not have trouble finding these in your average grocery store. There's so much available online if online shopping is an option for you as well. These are just a couple more examples. Lots of brands make a salt-free, a lower sodium variety, as well as their regular variety. So Lowry's seasoning salt is a pretty famous seasoning salt that a lot of people used. It got really popular a couple decades ago. It did have a lot of salt in it, though, pretty high level of sodium. So now they make one that's salt-free, and it tastes delicious. I put this stuff in hamburgers, for example. All these, you can see it says, look, Ma, no salt on the Dax. There's Magic salt-free seasoning. You can find these everywhere. This is what you're going to look at a lot through this conversation. So anytime you're looking for something at the store and you want to know whether you're choosing something that has a lot of salt in it, we're always going to flip over to the back of the package and look at the nutrition facts. We're going to look for sodium. So on the nutrition facts, it's never going to use the word salt. It's always going to say sodium, so that's what we're looking for. You can see right here it says 0 milligrams of salt. The recommendation for the average person is to have no more than 2,000 milligrams of salt per day. Now, those of us with high blood pressure, we actually need to have even less than that. We need to keep it under 1,500 milligrams of salt per day. So this number, it's great when it says 0. Another thing people like to do, sometimes it's hard to just remember that I only need 1,500 milligrams in a day. This percentage right here can help us out as well. If we see something that has a percentage higher than 15%, that is a lot of sodium to have in one sitting. So these are just some other examples of some herbs and spices without salt. Mrs. Dash also makes like taco seasoning mix, chili seasoning mix, so there's a lot of options. This is something that when we're talking to patients, a lot of people get confused about. So there's a lot of health crazes based around things that are natural, organic, pure, and you may have seen advertisements for things like Himalayan pink salt and all natural sea salt. You know, the thing about salt is all salt is salt, and there may be small amounts of other minerals in it depending on where the salt has come from in the earth, but all salt has sodium in it, and all salt will make our blood pressure go up if we use too much of it. So what I don't want people to think is that something like kosher salt or sea salt is somehow healthier than regular table salt. There may be some very slight differences in other minerals that are found in the salt, but it has the same amount of sodium no matter what kind of salt we use. There's some examples on the next page. So if you go to the store and you're in the spices, seasoning, salts aisle, you can see all these different types of salts. And because of the packaging on some of them may claim to be healthier than others. It'll say things like natural or pure. These do not mean that this kind of salt is lower in sodium, and it does not mean that it's healthier for us. So be careful. If you want to buy some pink Himalayan salt, it's usually more expensive. You're welcome to do that, but just be aware that it's going to raise our blood pressure just as much as the cheaper, Morton iodized table salt that we're used to. There is such a thing. This is a kind of a newer invention called a salt substitute. So, and disclaimer here, I have never tried these. So I'm giving you information about them. I would love to hear in comments if anyone has tried these. Now that I've heard of them, I would like to try them. But these are things, they are advertised as tasting like salt, but they have 0 milligrams of sodium. So that means they have 0 milligrams of that stuff that raises our blood pressure, that stuff that we're supposed to have less than 1,500 milligrams of each day. Now that I know what these are, I've seen them in a few really big grocery stores, but they aren't in smaller grocery stores. So they might be easier to find online. Again, if you've tried one of these, I would love to comment and tell me about your experience, because I myself have never tried them. But yeah, anything that says salt substitute should have 0 milligrams of sodium. And if you looked on the label, it would say 0 milligrams of sodium. Yeah, this is just a little disclaimer. So some people, their doctor or nurse, their healthcare provider, may have told them they need to be on a diet with limited potassium, or they need to only have a certain amount of potassium in the food they eat. If this applies to you, sometimes this is because of a certain medication you might take, or if you have some kidney issues, you definitely want to speak to your doctor before you try a salt substitute. So salt substitutes are made with potassium instead of sodium. I think that's why they can claim that they taste the same, because potassium and sodium are really close together on the chemical periodic table. But just beware, if your doctor has told you that you need to be on a limited potassium diet, definitely talk to them before you start using a salt substitute so that you don't get sick from that. This is also an option that you can find at the store. This stuff I have tried, and I can say, honestly, to me, it tastes just like regular salt. This is called light salt. There's a couple brands of it. This is just the one that I have seen most often. It has 50% less sodium than table salt. So, for example, if I'm making cookies and the recipe calls for 1 teaspoon of salt, I can use the exact same amount of this salt as the recipe calls for. I don't have to double it because there's less sodium. And again, to me, this tastes just like regular salt. You can see here at the bottom where I'm circling, it's iodized salt and potassium chloride. So that means this one, it's got half potassium and half sodium chloride. So you still, if you are supposed to be on a limited potassium diet, you probably want to talk to your doctor about using this and make sure it's okay for you. So when we're talking about cooking, a lot of us, especially in the United States, but really in lots of parts of the world, we get used to eating really salty food. A long time ago, back when we were, living in caves, salt was really, really hard to come by. We didn't have it in almost anything we ate. Salt naturally comes from the ground, and we just didn't really get much of it in our diet when we were running around living in caves. That's one thing, and one thing our body needs is our body needs a tiny little bit of salt to function. So anything that is scarce or not much of, our body will naturally crave it to get us to seek it out. And that's the problem with salt. It used to be very rare before, modern times when it was very available. So we would really like this really strong salty flavor because it would get us to seek out salt and taste a little bit of it to get that tiny little bit of salt that we need in our diet. Well, now the problem is salt is everywhere. It's on everything, and we all probably eat way too much of it. So what we have to do is we have to train our tongues to not like and expect this big salty flavor. When you talk to chefs, they'll tell you that the job of salt is actually to elevate the other spices, and that's what salt is really good at. So if I'm making my own spaghetti sauce, for example, all the flavors that I really want to taste that taste so good are basil, oregano, a little bit of thyme, lots of garlic and onion. A half teaspoon of salt will just make all those other flavors of the herbs and spices stronger. And that's what some salt is good for. So all that to say, when you're talking about trying to lower your blood pressure, definitely lean into using lots of herbs and spices and just a tiny bit of salt. People who have high blood pressure don't have to cook with 0 salt. It's just that most of us are used to cooking with way too much salt, way more than we need. And it really does prevent us, if we oversalt everything, it really prevents us from enjoying a lot of other good flavors as well. Over here, you can see just an example of a nutrition label, nutrition facts, datos de nutrición in Español. And here you can see this particular one. This is Lawry's salt-free seasoning salt. This one has, again, sodio, 0 milligrams, which is 0% of the daily value of sodium that we're supposed to have. Another thing I think that people, when they start learning how to cook, discover that's a really, really good way to add flavor to food is using citrus rinds. So if you ever watch cooking shows or anything, you'll always see people grating lemons and limes and oranges into their food. Using the skin of citrus fruits like lemons and limes and oranges is a really good way to add flavoring to food. And a lot of pre-dried spice mixes that you can find have little bits of dehydrated orange and lemon and lime in them. So the rind is the name of the colored skin on the outside of citrus fruits. Citrus fruits that we commonly eat are oranges, lemons, and limes. I would say lemons are the ones that are most commonly used in cooking. If you want to get the rind off of a lemon to use in your recipe or in your cooking, or just to add excitement even to something like yogurt, you can use a cheese grater. You can use something called a microplane. You just want to be really careful that, you're only getting off the colored part of the skin of the fruit. Once you get down to the white part, you don't want to get that much of that part in your food because it tastes very, very bitter. These are just some examples of herbs and spices that can make our food really, really flavorful, where we won't need very much salt, if any salt, to make things taste good. Onion or onion powder, chopped garlic. This can be fresh or pickled garlic or garlic powder. Now stay away from garlic salt. When you see a container of garlic salt, what that is usually half salt, half garlic. So it's extremely salty. Red pepper, which is spicy, cayenne pepper, which is spicy, cumin, coriander, basil. This can be fresh or dried, oregano, lemon rind. So again, that's the skin of that yellow lemon citrus fruit. Lemon pepper salt-free seasoning. This, I have to say, this is just my personal preference. I think it tastes really good on a lot of things, especially like roasted vegetables or fish. You will see lemon pepper seasoning that does not say salt-free. Some of it does have a lot of salt in it, so you definitely want to look for the salt-free varieties. Those honestly taste better anyway. Italian seasoning herb blends. There's salt-free Cajun or Creole seasoning blends. This Tony Chachere's right here is one example. The original Tony Chachere's is a lot of salt in it. Honestly, the no salt variety tastes a lot better. You can really taste the flavors more. Turmeric, allspice, ginger, thyme, and I mean, the list goes on. If you look at recipes online, you'll see so many different spices that I have not listed here. One thing that I think I hear from people a lot is like, oh, well, I don't really understand why my blood pressure is high because I don't put salt in any of my food. And that's the thing. A lot of us are really pretty good about not putting salt in our food, and maybe not even cooking with a lot of salt. But because we, in this country especially, eat so many things that are already prepared for us, they might already have a lot of salt in them just by how they're made. Some good examples of this are things like condiments, sauces, and dressings. So we're going to go over some examples about this. So barbecue sauce, absolutely delicious. We're going to look at how much sodium is in pre-made sauces and dressings. So this is our Sweet Baby Ray's barbecue sauce, just a brand that you see on the shelf a lot. Now, what we want to look for when we're looking at this label, we want to first look at the serving size. So right up here, you can see in bold, my mouse is going over it, the serving size is 2 tablespoons. I don't know about you guys, but when I eat barbecue, I usually eat more than 2 tablespoons of sauce. That's not very much. And then when I look at the sodium, it says in that 2 tablespoons, I have what is 13% of the daily value of sodium, which is 290 milligrams. So if I were to only eat 2 tablespoons, that's not that bad, but that is about 1/5 of the sodium that I should be eating in a day. So I'd have to try to go light on salty things for the rest of the day. So with things like this, anytime we're talking about salt or dressing or condiments, it's okay to eat these things. We just want to make sure we're watching the serving size, because as you'll see in some of our next examples, sometimes the serving sizes are way smaller than most people eat. So we want to make sure how much of the product we're actually consuming. Okay, this one is ranch. This is a really good example. I love ranch dressing. It's delicious. First, let's take a look at what is 1 serving. Now, 1 serving of ranch dressing is 2 tablespoons. A lot of us who use ranch as a dip, not just as a salad dressing, maybe salad dressing dip, some people cook with it, end up eating more than 2 tablespoons worth of ranch. So we have to think, okay, if we're having 2 tablespoons, that's 11% of our daily value of sodium that we're getting. So, okay, it's only 1/10 of what we need for a day. But if we're having more than 2 tablespoons, we need to watch what we're having. And again, we can make our own decisions. We're just better able to make decisions if we know what we're eating and what percent of our salt, basically our sodium, are we getting from each thing that we're eating. Another thing to point out on a label like this is when you see a list of ingredients, this is usually below the nutrition facts. The order that you see these ingredients in is the order of what there is most of in the dressing. So for example, the first ingredient is vegetable oil. That means most of this bottle, the biggest ingredient is vegetable oil, then water, then sugar, then salt. So because we see salt is the 4th biggest ingredient, that's going to tell us that there is quite a bit of salt in there. Ketchup is a really, really good example. Most people eat ketchup on a weekly basis. Kids love it. Sometimes you can't get them to eat anything if you don't put ketchup on it. Again, the serving size, I don't know, I might just be eating more than everybody else, but 1 tablespoon of ketchup is not very much. I feel like a lot of us consume more than that when we're eating it with our French fries or on a hamburger. So we want to think, okay, how much are we eating? And do we need to multiply this milligrams of sodium number? So let's say, okay, the serving size of ketchup is 1 tablespoon. I know when I'm eating, I generally eat about 3 times this much. I eat 3 tablespoons. I can't really say that I'm only getting 8% of my daily value of sodium. I have to multiply that by 3. So if I'm eating 3 servings. So I'm actually getting 24% of my daily value amount of sodium. So 24%, then I'm getting close to 1/4 of the sodium that I'm allowed to have for the day. So again, not saying we cannot eat ketchup, we just have to be aware of how much salt, sodium is in it. So we can make good decisions for the rest of the day. Soy sauce is a really salty food. It's delicious. Use it in a lot of cooking, but you can see there's 2 varieties sitting here. So this is the traditional with the red cap is the traditional soy sauce, and next to it is the less sodium soy sauce. Now on the right here, you see this green label. This is the less sodium soy sauce. The less sodium soy sauce still has 24% of your daily value of sodium. That's 575 milligrams, and that's only in 1 tablespoon of soy sauce. So when we're cooking something with soy sauce or using it, we want to be really careful that we're only using a small amount because this is very, very salty. And remember, this is the lower sodium variety. When we're talking about the one with the red cap, the traditional soy sauce, we have to double that amount. So again, just important for us to know how to read labels so we can make smart decisions. So what kind of things can we do to limit, sorry, I just keep losing my slides. What kind of things can we do to limit our sodium from sauces, dips, and dressing? So when possible, make your own so you can choose how much salt to put in. There's lots of recipes, for example, to make your own salad dressing. Again, when this is possible, it's really fun to do. You can personalize it, make it taste exactly how you want. If that's not always possible, look for low salt and low sodium varieties of sauces, dressings, and dips. And definitely watch your portions and serving sizes. A lot of sauces and dressings are super thick, and water can sometimes be added into them to make a smaller amount of that dressing, for example, go further with your food. A good example of this is teriyaki sauce, for example. So when I'm cooking stir fry, I like to use teriyaki sauce, but the teriyaki sauce I use is really thick. I take a little whisk or a fork and mix it in with like the same amount of water, and it makes it go a lot further, and it still has that same taste. So definitely play around with that. Ranch dressing, for example, is also super thick. It tastes just as good if you water it down, and then it'll cover more leaves in your salad, for example. And then you can also look at nutrition labels and choose varieties with less sodium. So for salad dressings, for example, you have French dressing, ranch dressing, Caesar, balsamic vinaigrette, raspberry vinaigrette. All of those are going to have really different amounts of sodium in them. So you can take a look and see which one of the ones you like has the least amount of sodium in it. These are just some examples of varieties of things that you can use that have low or no sodium. So this is a salad dressing that has 0 sodium in it, and there is no salt added ketchup. This is pretty good, and I actually have seen this in stores. This is pretty available. It tastes the exact same to me. One thing that I think you'll find when you're looking at low sodium or no sodium varieties, you really don't miss anything with the taste. That's what kind of makes me wonder why the salt is in there in the first place, because it really doesn't taste any different without it. This, first of all, this is just a really silly picture. I cannot believe the cheesy pictures that they have online, but the point of putting this picture on here is, you know, some of us will say like, oh, I just don't have time to care about this. I'm really busy taking care of whoever, my family, my kids, my grandkids. But the thing is, if we don't take care of ourselves, we're not going to be around to take care of others. And when we take care of ourselves, this sets a really, really good examples for other people, especially young people. our young people, be that kids, grandkids, nieces and nephews, whoever, they watch what we do and they copy us. So when we care about our health, they're going to care about their health too. And this is one way that we can stop passing on a lot of diseases that run in families. Some diseases are genetic, but a lot of diseases have a component that's based on our own behavior too. So just an important little thing. I know it can be kind of intimidating to think of trying to change your diet when you have other people to take care of, but we should all be eating healthier. So pushing our families and our kids to eat healthier too is really important. So prepackaged foods, you have probably heard a lot about prepackaged foods. Lots of prepackaged and pre-prepared foods are super high in sodium. This includes food in sit-down restaurants and also foods that are from fast food restaurants. So the main thing about restaurants is their goal is not to cook you the healthiest meal unless they're a very special health chain restaurant. Their goal is to make the food so delicious, addictingly good that you'll keep coming back for more. Also, as I was talking about earlier, that salty flavor, when we keep eating it, it is addicting. Our bodies used to not have enough of it way back in the day, thousands of years ago. So we are genetically programmed to like that flavor. When it is possible, it's always best to make our own food at home. Whatever we make at home is going to have less salt in it than the same thing made at the store or a restaurant. Or we can look for pre-prepared and prepackaged options that say low sodium or low salt or no salt added. I know it's not always possible for us to cook everything from scratch from home, but when possible, it really does make a good difference for our health. And even when we're not cooking at home, we can look for lower sodium and low salt options. These are just a few examples. I could go on about this forever. There is lots of hidden salt in a lot that we eat, but we just have time for a few examples. So one thing that people, it's delicious, people eat it, is sausage. We're talking all kinds of sausage. So here we have summer sausage, but I'm talking about pepperoni, kielbasa, andouille, you name it, chicken sausage, turkey sausage, pork sausage, beef sausage. All of it fits into this category. It's extremely high in sodium. So you can see this is the nutrition facts over here for this Johnsonville summer sausage. One serving, which is 2 ounces, so that's about 2 slices of sausage, has 28% of your daily value of sodium. That's a lot. So you got to think that's almost 1/3 of the sodium that you're allowed to get in a day just in this 1 2-ounce serving of sausage. So again, if we're going to choose to eat that, we have to remember that we have to go light on the sodium the rest of the day because we've already eaten more than our fair share in just this small bite. This is another one. A lot of processed meats and prepackaged meats are really high in sodium. So jack links, beef jerky, really any kind of dehydrated meat is going to be similar to this. There is 19% of your daily value of sodium, which in this case is 460 milligrams per serving. A serving size is 1 ounce. It doesn't tell us how many pieces that is. That would be helpful if we knew how many pieces that is. But again, 19% is almost 20%. That's almost 1/5 of the sodium that we're allowed to have in a day, just from having a 1 ounce serving of this. So again, if we choose to eat it, that's fine. We just have to be really careful about not eating a lot of salt, a lot of sodium for the rest of our day. Lunch meats are notorious for having really high levels of sodium, so much so that, thank goodness, they have started to make lower sodium varieties. So this is the traditional Hillshire Farms, turkey lunch meat. And then they also make, usually right next to it in the store, a lower sodium variety. And this is really small, it's hard to see, but I think it says 30% less sodium. So that's not that there's no sodium in it, but it is less than the traditional. So whenever there is a lower sodium option available, it's good to choose it. And honestly, I've tried both of these, and like most things, you do not miss the salt in a lower sodium option. You cannot taste the difference. Again, canned soups and canned broths are really high in sodium. So when possible, choosing low sodium is really, really, really good, and it doesn't hurt the taste at all. I say this from experience. I cannot taste the difference. This is another thing, and this has a couple of things on it that I want to point out. So spaghetti and meatballs, right here you see healthy kids entree. So we're going to look about what that is. This can has something on its label that I really like. So 1 can is actually 2 serving sizes. Now, as an adult, if I was going to eat this, I would probably eat the whole can. I wouldn't eat half of it. So that's what these two columns are. This column is 1 cup of, so that'd be half the can, and this column over here is 2 cups, which would be the entire can. If I'm eating just half the can, I'm going to get 26% of my daily value of sodium. So I'm going to get 600 milligrams from eating 1 cup of this. If I'm eating the whole can, which is 2 cups, I'm getting 46% of my daily value of sodium. That's almost half of the sodium that I am supposed to have in a day just in this can of SpaghettiOs. So again, if we're going to do this, we just need to make sure it's a really educated choice. Another really high sodium food that we're really accustomed to eating is boxed pastas, pre-prepared pastas, like ramen noodles is over here with the red package and macaroni and cheese over here with the blue package. So this one has an interesting 2 columns on their nutrition facts. The first column says as packaged. Now what that means is if I ate everything in the package without cooking it, which I hope that people don't have to do, but it's on there. As prepared, that just means nutrition facts after you add in the things they tell you to add in the instructions, like butter and milk. So with these nutrition facts, we can see when I prepare it, we're just going to look at that because I don't want to eat it without preparing it. That's going to give me 30% of my daily value of sodium for eating this macaroni and cheese. And what you want to look at up here, that's only if I'm eating 1/3 of the box, because the serving size is 2.5 ounces and servings per container is 3. That means this daily value of sodium right here is only for 1/3 of the box. Again, as an adult, when I eat macaroni and cheese, I'm usually eating the whole box. So what I have to do is I have to say, okay, I'm not just eating 1/3 of this box, I'm eating 3 of them. So I have to multiply this number by 3. If I choose to eat this entire box of macaroni and cheese, I'm getting 90% of the daily value of salt or of sodium that I should be getting. So again, if I choose to eat this, I have eaten almost all the salt that I should be eating in one day. So just something to be aware of. Again, if I were to make my own macaroni and cheese at home, which takes more time, but it is more delicious, that will have much less salt than this does. Cheese naturally has salt in it, but dehydrated cheese like this that's in macaroni and cheese is way higher in salt than a block of cheese that you'll find at the store. Ramen noodles, you know, really good, cheap food to eat that tastes good and you can make it quickly. This is usually 2 serving sizes in one package. So you can see under nutrition facts, it says serving size 1/2 block of noodles with seasoning. So again, when we're looking at this, we're looking at nutrition facts for half of this package. So if I'm only eating half of this package, which again, a lot of people eat the whole package, I'm getting 35% of my daily value of sodium from these ramen noodles. If I'm eating the entire package, guess what? I have to multiply that by 2. I'm eating 70% of the sodium that I'm supposed to have in a day. So you can see how eating a lot of packaged foods is really going to add up, and I'm going to have really high levels of sodium in my diet if I'm eating a lot of these packaged foods. What's really crazy is if you look down here where it says soup base ingredients, the first ingredient in the soup base is salt. Remember what we said about ingredients? The first ingredient is the one they have the most of. The first ingredient in the soup is salt. So that may explain why there's so much sodium in this. These are just some pictures to help us kind of encourage us that when we're shopping, it is possible to find lower sodium options. So things like canned beans can naturally have quite a bit of salt and sodium in them, but they are really good about making a lot of low sodium options these days. So it doesn't even matter what kind of beans you buy. Like here we have pinto beans and black beans, both very easy to find low sodium varieties. And it's kind of small, but you can see it says right here, 65% less sodium than our regular black beans. That's great. These don't have no sodium in them, but they definitely have less than the regular of the same kind. There is a lot of hidden sodium that you don't really taste in things like pre-prepared spaghetti sauce. Now here we have a really good option because it says lower sodium. It says 25% lower sodium than regular Prego traditional sauce. If you want to make the sodium even less, we can make our own sauce. Again, if you have time, it's really good to make your own sauce because it tastes better. You can get it exactly how you want it. You can use the no salt added tomato sauce, garlic and onions, Italian seasonings. But if you want to get the sauce in the can or the jar, it's really good to look for one that says lower sodium just to cut down on that salt. And again, I've tried this as well as the regular Prego tomato sauce. They taste exactly the same to me. So I really don't see anything missing from having less salt in it. So with anything canned, sometimes, you know, whether it's just the time of year or that's what we have on hand, or maybe that's what we can get from the food pantry, sometimes we're gonna want to eat canned foods or we need to eat canned foods. The best thing to do for canned foods, whether or not we are getting them low sodium or not, is always to run cold water over beans, for example, corn or peas, and put them in a strainer or colander to remove a lot of the excess salt. Because a lot of the salt that's in those canned foods is sitting in the liquid, and we don't really need to eat that liquid anyway. So this won't take out all of the salt that's in the food, but it does remove about 1/3 of it. And really any salt that we can get rid of is good. When it is possible, it's really good for us to use frozen varieties of things like peas, beans, or corn, any vegetable really. If we can get it frozen, it's not going to have salt like canned does. Now, sometimes it depends on, you know, how we're doing with funds that month, or what we have available. But when we can buy frozen, it's really healthy to do so because salt is a preservative. It helps things stay good for a long time. When things are frozen, they don't need salt to preserve them because the cold preserves them. And things that are frozen are very healthy because they're frozen at the very peak of freshness when they have the maximum amount of nutrients in them. So they're very, very healthy. And then you just need to steam them usually a little bit to cook them. If you have time, cooking dried or dehydrated beans is a really good option to limit the salt. And sometimes, you know, if it's in season and we can afford it, eating fresh corn or peas is really helpful because then there's no salt in it. Both with dehydrated beans and fresh corn and peas, there isn't any salt sitting in that product. The only salt that we're going to have is if we choose to add any when we're cooking. Generally, when we cook on our own, we do not add as much salt as a restaurant does or as a packaging plant would when they're creating a prepackaged product for us. So we could talk about salt and sodium in foods forever, but I'll be done for now. We'll publish some more videos. If you have any questions or comments, you can email me or you can comment below. And if you want to find out more about community health, again, we're a free clinic located in Chicago, and we care for people who do not have health insurance or Medicaid. Our website is www.communityhealth.org. Thank you.